welcome everyone. So this session today really comes from our members. One of the questions we've been asked again and again is, how do you shoot broadcast quality footage on your phone? The phone has completely democratized filmmaking. Almost everyone has access to one. Stories that might never have been told before can now be captured. At the same time, and I think many of us have felt this, not everyone believes that phones can be used as well as traditional cameras. And I know I certainly don't know how to use my phone in a way that's cinematic or broadcast ready. So this has really piqued our curiosity as a community. What are the creative implications? What are the technical implications? And what does it mean for storytelling, ethics, collaboration, and industry standards? So that's what it's about. We'll unpack these questions together. So just a few things. The session is being recorded and it will be available to all of our DFA members in good time. Please keep your microphones on mute. And because webinars can feel like you're just shouting into a void and looking at yourself on the screen, please could you use your emojis and your reactions, claps, thumbs up, hearts, just so that everybody who's speaking can really feel the room. So our format this evening, we'll hear 15 minutes from each speaker. Thanks, Cheryl. Take a few questions after each, so you can put your hand up and then be prepared to have your camera on so that you can speak your questions so that everybody can see you. And then afterward, at the end, we'll open it to a broader discussion. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Amira. Today's session is part of DocShare, which is a completely volunteer-led initiative of the DFA. And all of these sessions are free for our members and are created by people giving their time because they care about this industry. So if you're interested in volunteering or joining the DFA DocShare, we'd absolutely love to have you. This organization exists because people choose to participate. So without further ado, let me show you a little bit about what we have in store for you today. So I'm just going to share my screen.
يا ريت ما أفضل يموت يا أخي ده.
كنت خواف ولشجاع.
أنا بخاف منه أنا لما الشيطان يجي يدرب كابوس بينتهي.
So this was the trailer of Cartoon, Snoopy's film, mostly captured on a phone. Everything was captured on his phone except for some of the studio footage. And he'll share a little bit more about that a little bit later. So Each of our speakers today comes at this topic from a different angle. And together they give us a wide, grounded view of what it means to work professionally with mobile tools. Thank you, everybody, for the hearts. So we're going to start with Neo, who many of you know very well. Neo is a documentary filmmaker, editor, and a board member of the DFA. She's also deeply involved in mobile storytelling, training across the continent, working closely with young filmmakers and community-based contributors. Neo brings a grounded, practical perspective to this conversation, especially around collaboration, participation, and ethics. And Neo has a few tips and tricks for us, I think, and I was particularly interested in some of the more technical aspects. So over to you, Neo.
Thank you so much, Amira. That was a beautiful introduction of me. Hi, everybody. Like Amira said, my name is Neo. And just a bit of background. I am very passionate about empowering other young people, especially in rural communities and marginalized communities that don't always have access to equipment or access to documentary filming as a whole. So what I do is that I engage with the young people and technically show them how they can use their mobile phones to tell their stories. I like to call the stories that they tell as tools for advocacy because a lot of the cell phone documentaries that they make for community engagement. And also just to add in your introduction, I work for a nonprofit organization called STEPS that uses the power of documentary film for social change and to empower youth, especially those marginalized communities. So what we will do is that we will train them on how to tell those tell stories or address issues in their community and be able to take them back into their community to have those honest discussions about issues that they might be facing in their community, to have discussions with stakeholders, and most importantly, I think to hold decision makers accountable. And like I said, I'm very passionate about empowering other young people. So this is also so that young people can be part of decision making in their community, essentially. And I think nowadays the world is moving digital, and everybody has a cell phone, and it's becoming more and more and more and more popular, be it vlogs or YouTube videos or all of that. So everyone is kind of like always tuned into their cell phones all the time. And I think as documentary filmmakers, it's quite an important skill to have, especially in cases where you might not have your camera and there's really important footage that you need to take, because our cell phones nowadays, with the advances, are very much capable of taking high quality footage. It's all a matter of knowing how to set up your phone, which I will show you some few tips that can help you start your journey into kind of like filming with your phone, because it does make a difference. If you it's about like that camera setting that you might have, or a specific app that you might need to download to enhance it and make it better, and that's what makes it different from an ordinary footage to like a really highly professional video like the one that we have just watched. And one other thing I think that is really important is that it is affordable. So it makes storytelling accessible. And I think with the history of our country and the history of our people, storytelling hasn't always been something that we have power over. So I think what cell phone filming is that it's giving us a voice to be able to tell our stories as authentically and as honest as we want them to be. So it just gives you that power of voice essentially. And then some of the key tips that I might have, and I want to add that when things are evolving, there are some, it's very important also as an industry to be part of that. I wanted to show how back then, in the early 2000s, for digital storytelling, or kind of like, I think of this camera as like a vlog camera back in the days. I don't know if anyone remembers it. So this was some form of like a digital camera before we had smartphones like these. So people will use this one to shoot. And what's different about this, of course, it's the quality, but also it will only shoot footage for like 20 minutes. Um, and now we have cell phones that have like a lot of space, but this was kind of like the beginning. And with times, things are evolving, which is something that we are also starting to discuss, that how can we as an industry also evolve and get into this new way of doing things, but also not losing the tradition of storytelling, because I think it's important to keep that rich storytelling and documentary tradition into the cell phone filming, because the only thing that the cell phone does is really is kind of like not replacing a camera, but is a tool that can help you be able to tell your stories in a more affordable way. But it doesn't really take much from the way that you will tell your stories if you were using like the big equipments that are bigger. So it's just basically making it more convenient that even if you don't have the funding, you can always shoot with your phone while the funding comes. But you can still use the footage that you shoot with your phone to match it with the ones that you'll have on the camera. Like I said, the quality is becoming better and better, and it's getting more advanced with time, basically. So one of the key apps that I would always recommend, especially when you're starting your journey into maybe wanting to film with your cell phone, or you are somewhere in a march and there's a decision maker saying something, you don't have your camera and you want to shoot that because it might be something that will be usable in your footage. You can use the Filmic Pro. It's a video camera app, absolutely amazing, because what it does, it basically gives you control over, if you have a Canon camera, you can control the color, temperature, you can control the aperture. So that gives you those options to kind of like make it more cinematic and more crisp and beautiful, if that's what you are going for. And then the Blackmagic, what I like about the Blackmagic app is that if later on you wanting to maybe use Blackmagic for your documentary that you are shooting, it is you are easily going to be able to match that footage that you would have taken with inside the Blackmagic app. And you can also download it on your App Store, your Google apps, and then that kind of like changes the settings of your camera to kind of like match it a bit with the Blackmagic. Obviously, it's not like perfectly matched, but it is good enough to be able to get you that cinematic, crisp feel in your video. And the Blackmagic camera app is free, I think. The Filmic Pro, there is a fee that you might pay. Yeah, yes, it has a fee, but the Blackmagic is absolutely free. And then one that I used to do before these ones was the open camera. That also helps with being able to lock your camera when you are shooting so that it doesn't change. Because what cell phones does, it always auto focuses. So the open camera, I liked it because I could be able to lock, and it also kind of like gave me the nice cinematic feel to my footage, and I had more control over it. And then some of the filming tips that can help you record a highly professional film is that I know a lot of the time when we take our cell phones, we just like shoot like this, but it is important if you want to achieve that cinematic feel to like keep it on landscape, because what landscape does is that it creates a full screen on your phone. And also to keep it steady, I cannot emphasize it enough that if you are going to be filming with your phone, keep it steady. You can use tripods, like the cell phone tripods that you can use. You can use your selfie sticks also, because it can break it can either ruin whatever that you've shot if there's some like shaky shots, unless creatively that's what you are looking for. But if you are wanting to have like a proper cinematic, like the ones that we've seen now, you have to get that smaller tripod, or make sure that your phone is as steady as it gets. I don't trust my hands because I'm very shaky, so I wouldn't recommend to use hands. But if you don't have at that moment like a tripod, you can try to kind of like keep it as steady as you can, like lock it as steady, and being wary of not putting your fingers in your camera, because that can happen. It's a common mistake that happens. So just kind of like keeping it as steady as possible, because it does make a big difference. One other tip that I have is in terms of lighting, because when it comes to lighting, whether you have a good camera or good footage, if the lighting is bad, it really is going to ruin your video. For those who have access to lighting for your interviews, you can make use of the 3-point lighting, where you can have your key light, your fill light, and then your backlight for your shadows there, and set it up nicely for your interview. But if you don't have, you can always use sunlight or the sun as an advantage. But even with that, make sure that you're not putting your protagonist directly into sunlight, because that can also affect the quality of the footage. I personally like to film with my cell phone when it's a bit cloudy, so I would see how the weather is like if there's cloudy days, because that works beautifully and to my advantage. But if you are not, or if you are pressed with time and you can't really wait to measure the weather when it's cloudy, just make sure that you do not put your protagonist into direct sunlight. And you can also use like reflectors to help if you have, but if you don't have, you can just make sure that they are away from the sun. It's not like directly in the sun. We are going to talk more about sound and some tools that you can use for sound next week, I think. But yeah, that's pretty much the summary. And then for camera settings, there are some also tips that you can that I have, like if you want, I have some notes here. If you want to set up your camera for recording high quality. I personally, because I use an iPhone, I usually just put it on cinematic, and it's 4K, but you can change it also in your settings if it's not, you don't have like the cinematic one like that. So you basically just go to your settings and to your camera settings, and on your camera settings, it'll give you a few options. And then you can just, on my side, it's the first option that says record video. And then you go to the record video, and then you can enable it to 4K by 30. But also, if you're not looking for an 4K, you're wanting a 1080 by 25 or by 30 frames per second, you can set it at that. I like to set it at 4K with my phone. It does take up a lot of space when you set it up on 4K, but I prefer to set it up on 4K, because even if the quality reduces, it doesn't reduce as bad. It goes to kind of like an HD level, but it still maintains that high crisp quality. So 4K is what I use. But obviously, as you're practicing and you're seeing what works, you can also kind of like work with that. The one disadvantage is definitely space because there's so many things that you have on your phone. So space can be a big problem when you're filming with your phone because you constantly have to be deleting everything that you have, even every app that you have. So that is the one disadvantage. But otherwise, if you're an indie filmmaker like myself, or a young emerging filmmaker, really no money or just wanting to kickstart your career in the industry, it's always ideal to kind of like start shooting and then uploading on YouTube, or creating a platform or a portfolio for yourself, because it does make a lot of difference, especially when you keep on practicing. You get better in the way that you tell stories. You get better in finding your voice, and you just get better in creating your content, essentially. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything that I might have missed.
Gosh, thanks, Neo. I think it's great for us to know that even though everybody has access to a phone, I don't think everybody has access to film education. So not everybody can make cinematic films. So to a degree, we're safe, and at the same time, it is open to everybody. So there are a few questions in the chat. I want to invite Morgan. Would you like to ask your question so that everybody can hear as well?
I could, as long as I don't have to put on my camera because it's hot in Cape Town and I'm not properly attired. Hi, can I just ask? The one thing I said was that, Hollywood, there are a couple of Hollywood directors who shoot with mobile phones, but they get away with the lights and then some really nice lenses. And I know there are kind of cheapish lens options for mobile phones available. You can buy it on Amazon or Takealot. But are there those kind of mid to high range lens options available as well in South Africa that you know of? Do I
Um,
make any sense? I hope I make sense.
yes, you do. I I haven't bought the high range. I think the ones that I've bought, I did try to buy myself some lenses, but they were an absolute disaster. But maybe because it wasn't on that level. If I find them, I'll show them later. But they didn't quite work well for me. It kind of like, yeah, it wasn't working for me. I
I was
guess it
hoping
also
I was
depends.
hoping more rental, not buy, not buy.
Oh, no, I've never rented. Yeah, I've never rented it before, but the ones that I bought were really bad. So I opted with like not using them, and my camera was better. It worked better without those lenses. If I do find them, I think they are just next to me in my drawer. I'll show you how they look like. Actually, I think I found some. Yeah, maybe I just got like the best quality ones. I think I got them at Takealot. Yes, this one. Yeah, it was like this one that I got that you can use. I don't know if you can see, but it was really, really bad. It did not work. I don't know. I'm happy to hear if somebody has used it before that worked better. It's closed. Wait a minute. But these specific ones, so they look something like this. They were really, really bad for, and then if you want to like change it, you can also use this other one. Yeah, they were really bad, honestly.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
thanks, Neo. I think it's really important also for us to know what to invest in and what not to invest in. So it's great to hear what works and what doesn't work. There's another question about SD cards. Would getting a big SD card make a difference, or does the phone camera only record on the phone?
An SD card, um, I think I'm not sure if you can put it in your phone, because the phones that they're making now, they don't really have. Oh, I see Snoopy has a hand up because I've never used an SD card on my phone. I always just use my space for my camera. You can go ahead, Snoopy, and answer.
Yeah, I love this workshops so much because all the research that I've been doing in the last few weeks, now I can share it with someone who wants to do the same thing and save them a lot of research and money and time. So for the SD card thing, so there's a small external drive, like this tiny, like very, very small, smaller than the SanDisk one, right? And it's for somewhere around $400. It's two terabytes. So you just plug it, Type C if you're using iPhone 16 and on or 15, but you plug it Type C and it gives you 2 terabyte of space. So this external comes in handy if you want to shoot with the Black Magic and you want to shoot flat, because in order for you to shoot flat on the Black Magic app, you need to have an external drive because with the space and everything. So there's this 2 terabyte external drive. And then there's also this kind of I don't know how to call it, like a pocket that you attach it via Type C, and this thing you put in it like an SD card, no matter what the size is, 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabyte, whatever. So it's basically like a reader, and you plug it into your phone, so you can use it like also the same way as an external drive, but instead of a drive, you use an SD card. And it's very handy in situations where you're shooting in a war zone and or you feel like there's some kind of danger, you just plug it out, swallow it, whatever you can do, just hide it, and then pretend that you weren't shooting, in these in specific circumstances.
Thank you so much, Snoopy. I think Snoopy's introduced himself. So I'll tell you a little bit more about Snoopy. Snoopy Ibrahim Mohammed is a Sudanese director and cinematographer, currently based in Kenya, and his work spans documentaries, short films, music videos, often made in complex, fast-changing, resource-limited environments. And so the trailer that we saw earlier for Khartoum follows 5 individuals during the 2023 war in Sudan. So Snoopy, do you want to take it away and tell us more about how you filmed, the tools you've used, the circumstances under which you filmed, and how you found the phone to be the best way to do it?
Okay, cool. So, yeah, in Sudan, there's this dictatorship regime. It's very difficult to shoot with professional cameras with all these clearance, license, security pass, whatever it's called, and it's it's um, it's easier to shoot without these clearances, because in order for you to get them, it will take weeks, and sometimes you'll miss the shoot that or whatever you're shooting, right? So we were shooting with the phones because we wanted to film in an undercover way, not to draw too many attention. With the phone, it can be like just a selfie or whatever, something that's not, very serious or cinematic. So we couldn't use like a high-end camera, whatever there was available, like Sony or any Canon or whatever. So the phone was very much needed in those circumstances, and it helped because no one actually bothered us except for one time, but it wasn't because of the phone. And pretty much we were just trying to camouflage our way in that shoot in this community, because also in Sudan, not everyone's camera friendly, and people tend to not even shy away, but actually to fight you if they see you filming them. So we had to use the phone so that we avoid getting into trouble. And we used back then, it was the iPhone 14 Pro, and we were filming 5 different characters, like you saw in the trailer, and with different directors. Most of the time, I was shooting for other directors as well because I was doing good with, I also love to DP a lot. So, but we were just using just the phone without any kind of extra tools. We had a cage, but also sometimes it was drawing a lot of attention. So we just used the phone itself without extra equipment. And like you said earlier, we only used cameras, the Sony A7 III when we were shooting in the studio because the animator needed like a 4K flat kind of a high bit rate footage. But yeah, and since then, because also it was not just about shooting with the phone, but it was finding the right tool for our shoot, and back then the phone was the ideal thing. And now you see a lot of movies being shot with either phones or even dash cams, body cams, and many different formats. So it's about finding the right tool for your film and not just, a phone. And I think that sometimes we have all these different options, right? We have a camera, we have many different tools, but it's just about what to pick and what's the right thing. It depends also on where you're shooting, how the environment will react with your presence. Are they camera shy? Are they accepting the camera or phone, whatever you're using? For example, my next film, I'm shooting with this, like even something smaller than a phone, which is like this, one second, like the small DJI Nano. It's even smaller because I want to be almost like invisible, and I would want to be able to attach it to places that no one can see me. Not because I want to expose people, but just to avoid trouble. It's like a road trip, and there's a lot of, checkpoints all along, and I want to film those checkpoints and want to show the world what's happening. Just for the sake of me going home takes so much effort. So. And then also there's a music video that I shot in 2024, also entirely with the phone, and it was shot in Kenya and Uganda. And sometimes it's you want to just reduce cost and production and hassle and all of that. And if you're able to shoot with minimalistically, then why not, right? And maybe we can play some of the music video, few snippets, so that people can, check out the quality, and then we continue the conversation.
نيها نحن اليوم بدي أحكي معي شوية وما تزعل نحن كويسين قاعدين أنا وبابا الحمد لله إن شاء الله كويس إن شاء الله شغل ربنا كريم ربنا بيساعد الله عليك ما تكعب حبيبة قلبي
يا بلدنا هواك في سماك وهواك نتهنى يوم تنادي نجيك أصله ما بننساك نستنى في سلام وأمان نحن يوم نلقاك دي الجنة في قلوبنا غرام وفي لساننا هناك نتغنى
Yeah, so like I said, it's just about finding the right tools and the storytelling. And like Neo said, there's some kind of tricks that you also need to consider while shooting, the format, shooting horizontally, not vertically, unless you want to shoot it like for Instagram or you have a specific platform there you're targeting. Because there's a lot of film actually that are being shot right now, vertically, a lot of also vertically shot festivals, right? But overall, yeah, you need to also, not because of you're shooting with the phone, that means you can go lazy. You still have to do your homework of knowing how to shoot cinematically, and then the tool comes later. But you still have to know like the 3-point lighting, where to position your protagonist, how to shoot interviews, close up, long shots. What are the lenses that tell your story very well? I heard Morgan asking about lenses and these high-end lenses. Sometimes I think that Hollywood, they tell you you can shoot with the phone, but then they end up using tools that are way more expensive than using a cinematic camera, Red or Ari or whatever. So I think it's just a marketing scheme, just to promote for the phone, but it's not really like the real the documentary. There are a lot of documentaries right now this year. There's a documentary called my the Perfect Neighbor that's running for the Oscar, and you see them using a body cam, right? And you don't have to have like this perfectly balanced frame or whatever serves the story. You can even keep the camera open, and you can be shaking all along, and you can still use that in the edit as long as it's serving your story. Um, you see Jafar Panahi's film, he used a dash cam, and that film won so many awards just by using the dash cam in the front of the taxi in that movie Taxi, I guess, which is in 2015. And I have a friend of mine, she's a Indian filmmaker also. She shot a very, you wouldn't even tell that it's shot with the phone. A great short film in 4 days with iPhones also. So I think that um, just finding the right tools and what serves your story better.
Thanks, Snoopy. I see we've got a question from Carolyn. Carolyn, would you like to ask your question for all of us?
Yeah, thanks. I was just interested, Snoopy. Thanks. I love your film. It looks amazing. I'd love to watch it. If you can, share it with us. Well done. I just wanted to know, you were talking like the dash cam and stuff like that. With GoPros, like if you have a small GoPro and you want to hide stuff and you don't want to be seen, is the quality good enough to shoot on a GoPro? Do you get the range? Can you change the lenses as well? Or is the phone, or what did you call the one you used? You
Yeah.
showed us Nano. What did you call the little one?
So yeah, the DJI Nano. So it
Nano.
shoots like 4K, 120 frames per second. So like it's more than enough for what I'm going to use. But also what I've learned is that no one really cares about if you're shooting 4K, 2K, 1K. I had also this thing in mind. I was a equipment freak right before the war, and whatever's new on the market, the new Tilta, the latest cage, SD cards, ND filter, all of them, I used to spend all my money on them. But then I found out that if it doesn't serve the story, then it's useless. And now if I use a Sony A7 III, and I'll risk myself getting caught many times, right? But this small camera, it's invisible, right? And I'll get away with it, and it will have less risk while filming.
But for international broadcast, you're only allowed to have about 25% of your film that is 422, that's non-422. So you have to be very careful as well, especially with like ZDF Arte, they're very strict. So they put your film through a machine, and if you have more than 25%, they reject the film. So obviously one has to consider, if you want to do international distribution, how to ensure, because especially with archive, when you're using old archive, often it isn't 422 and you run into problems, even if you try to up-res it. So I guess
Um,
that's
yeah,
why it's
to
important
answer
to know.
to answer that, actually, our film had a lot of issues with the machine, but it went through, and it's the same movie that we shot with the phone. And even this GoPro is way more have more quality than the iPhone because it's like 100% dedicated to filming. So,
Uh,
I mean, and we had this issue, and our producer told us like a few weeks ago had so many back and forth with BBC with Arte and BBC
yeah.
because also BBC Storyville financed our film, and he had so
Mm,
much issues with the machine.
mm,
But at the end, it went through, and now the film you can also see it at on Arte on their website.
mm. Yeah, I
So
mean, obviously it's the context, but often, if they're not happy, they can reject it. It's all part of
mhm,
the discussion. I had was the same thing with Storyville and with Arte, because we use a lot of
mm,
old archive and we just couldn't
mhm,
upres it. So it's always a
mm.
problem. So you think the GoPro and the Nano, what is the best in terms of the quality in your experience for, when it's clandestine, it's small, when you're shooting, so you don't have people knowing you're filming, which is the best in your experience of all the cameras you've used?
I mean, what I used to use back in the days, like the Sony A7 III,
Mm,
good battery, flat, high bitrate, very flexible. This is what I used to use. But nowadays, I just use, whatever is available in the rental house. I prefer shooting with the Sony most of the time because I can rely on the battery without it dying.
mm,
And I still use like my iPhone also a lot of the times, you know. It depends on who are you shooting for and whether they are very flexible or not. I used to have this kind of theory of, like Netflix only takes movies 4K camera and this kind of Netflix approved
mm.
cameras, but it doesn't matter. Like there's a lot of, bypassing these kind of strict rules. As long as the story is great, your movie is doing very well in festivals, then no one really cares about these rules. And you can see that clearly in the movie. It's a Ukrainian movie called Porcelain Wars. The whole movie is shot in by drones and GoPros and a camera. It's a mix of all three. Most of the time they use GoPros, and
Interesting.
it still
Hi
was
guys.
Oscar nominated.
Can I just say something? It's Jane Lipman here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Jane.
Hi guys. I shot material on my iPhone that was used on. I've often shot material on my iPhone that's been used for BBC Africa Eye, and
Mhm.
yeah, it was great. And we got footage that we might not have got otherwise if I hadn't been able to quickly shoot with the phone, and it added to the story.
So
Yeah.
there's a question over here. Um, what did you use to stabilize the phone in the music video? Honestly, I just used my hand. I didn't use any stabilizer. I hate using stabilizers most of the time because it gives you like this very perfect shot which looks very fake, you know? So I just used my hands. But again, like earlier we said, me and Neo, like you have to have the skills, you need to really know how to use your hands, your body, how you breathe while shooting. All of it plays a huge role into having that cinematic shot. Like in the music video, when I was, moving behind the guy, I was just walking behind him. But the way that I walked, it's very much calculated how many steps I take, what's the distance between each step, and how I keep my body stabilized. And now that's how the shot was stabilized.
Thank you so much, Snoopy. I think the world is probably grateful I'm not a surgeon because I have Neo's shaky hands.
Mhm.
Neo, I wanted to ask you, I know we only asked you about the phone and we brought in lots of different cameras. Are there other cameras that you also like to use that you'd like to share with us?
I think it's highly dependent on what you're trying to achieve in your story. Like Snoopy has been saying, the equipment is the cherry on top. What makes and builds your story is the kind of stories that you're going to have. And if it makes sense to maybe, for example, use a camera like this one, if you want to get that old-ish feel, vintage feel to it, you can always use this camera. But essentially, it's all about having a strong, powerful story. And one of the things that I think Snoopy also mentioned, a lot of people are now submitting films. I know at Encounters, I watched quite a few films that were filmed with cell phones. So I think we are just at a time where things are evolving and changing a bit. It's not obviously taking away the traditional ways of doing things, but I think it's enhancing it and it's making it easier and more accessible. Big cameras are intimidating, especially when you're working with communities and when you're working with ordinary people that don't have cameras in front of their eyes all the time. Some people will feel more comfortable to have a smaller phone to be free and be able to be themselves. With a camera, you usually have to take like a week to familiarize your protagonist with the camera and being in front of the camera and not looking at the camera all the time. I know I'm always wanting to like look at the camera. I'm terrible at being in front of the camera. So it just takes a lot of that from having to spend weeks, even months, just having the camera in front of a person as part of your research. Because when you bring your phone, very much less intimidating. People just start talking. It's almost like it's not even there in my experience when you have your phone. So it's quite even for research and for archiving, it's a great tool to shoot and have something there. And then in the future, if you need that archive footage, you can always go back and use that footage again some other time.
I just thought that was very interesting what you said about, is it Snoopy, about breathing and your body. Because what I found when I was shooting with my phone was the way I breathe and move my body, it's like allows you to take longer shots. If you know what I'm saying, you have to sort of pace yourself. Does that make any sense in terms of a lovely long shot and a movement? You've got to really breathe through it and move your body in a certain way. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Go ahead, Neil.
Oh, go
Yeah.
for it, please.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And this is the technique that I use most of the time. If I'm using like a walking shot, I need to really step on my toes and slowly and slightly and stabilize my body. If I'm using like a long shot where I have to breathe, I need to know exactly when to breathe, hold your breath. And then whenever you find a slight window to, breathe out and in again, you do that, right? But sometimes if someone's let's say you're filming someone who's talking, suddenly the sound of your breathe gets in the shot, then you're ruining the shot. But once that person is in silent, then you find that small few seconds of breathing in and out. And also your body, there's a lot of exercises that you do without even going on a shoot, but at home or somewhere where you feel comfortable, you need to train yourself, moving slowly, because moving fast is easy, but the slow movement is the problem, because you apply so much pressure on your muscles, and at some point you can easily break down or like shake your hand.
Exactly.
So sometimes you put your hands on anything that can also help, what's the word, stabilize your hand, like a cushion or something, instead of, because it's like the boom operator, once he holds the boom so for so long, his hand starts to go down. So it's the same with the phone, even though the phone is light, but after 30 minutes you slowly start to feel sore, and you're gonna slow down and shift your shot. And then when you readjust it, we will see that in the shot, and then that will make it like less professional, I guess, unless you deliberately want to do that.
Exactly, yeah.
Everybody, this has been such incredible value. I don't think that you get this type of information from a textbook, how to breathe through your shots.
It's all about sharing. I'm gonna send the link to the hard drive that I mentioned earlier, the 2 terabytes one. I'm gonna share it with everyone over here on the chat so that people can see what I'm talking about.
It's an incredibly valuable chat. I see Morgan has also mentioned the value of using GoPros. What I want to do now, everybody, we were waiting for Molotelo Bosman. So Molotelo, I'd like to invite you into the conversation and share with everybody a little bit about who you are. If you don't know Molotelo, she's an award-winning filmmaker, media entrepreneur, educator with over 22 years of experience across television, film, current affairs. She brings a deep understanding of broadcast standards, storytelling craft, and mentorship. And she's got her own film school in Limpopo and was really busy today because I think the Department of Higher Education came and sprung a visit on you. So if you can tell us a little bit about that and jump into the conversation, do you have any insights around equipment and how it's being used and what your students are doing?
Right, thank you so much for having me, and my humblest apologies for being late. So as you rightly indicated, my name is Molotelo Bosman. So as someone who is running skills development programs and in a province like Limpopo, so I constantly try to look for opportunities as also solutions to problems. And one of those problems was access to equipment. So which is the reason why in 2021, we started implementing skills development programs that allowed our trainees or learners and interns to be able to use cell phones to produce content. So that is when I started, to, open up to the idea of using cell phones to a point where in fact, the idea of using cell phones, I must say, that started in 2020 during lockdown, when I was busy shooting a documentary titled Hangout Drive, that I actually will be making it available to Doc Love for screenings. So, so during 2020, I was in my village, obviously locked down. So I couldn't, the story was continuing, so I couldn't carry cameras around. And the only available gadget was my cell phone. So when you watch the documentary today, you see that all visuals that come from, or footage that comes from the 2020 era of lockdown was all shot on cell phone. Then I realized that this is actually not a bad idea at all. That is why then in 2021, we actually implemented a program that trained about 93 young people across the province of Limpopo. That's when we then, started introducing the program to National Electronic Media Institute of South Africa, and they are currently running programs after adopting it, because they realized that, access to equipment is actually a challenge that is affecting especially the new generation of filmmakers.
So with your students, I know late last year we started chatting about equipment because I had some equipment. And can you tell us a little bit about, it sounds like they're using a variety of different things. And I know Neo mentioned it depends on what they're filming. What type of content are your students filming and what are they currently using?
I mean, when I joined the meeting, I was listening to Neo talking about, sometimes it's easier for one to come with, small gadgets instead of big cameras, because especially I'm saying, we based in Limpopo, a lot of people here are not used to cameras. And the minute you come in with, your lights and, 2-3 cameras and, people were like a crew member for about 5 more people, they get so intimidated. But when it's a small gadget like that, so you're able to then, get more out of them. So I saw that happen with me when I was shooting my film Hung Out Dry in 2020. And from there, yes, I mean, of course, it's all about, the technique. I was listening to Snoopy as well when he was describing, how to handle the camera and how you breathe and again, that's where now training comes in. I mean, we see on social media the content that is there. Sometimes you can see that, if this person actually had the knowledge, the know-how of how to handle the camera, could come with content that is, aesthetically appealing. But because, there's no, they're actually not even thinking about that. So if we can just, make sure that the people that we train actually understand that, this is how you handle your camera, and especially sound as well. I don't know if you touched on sound as well, because that's very important. You can imagine that, most of the time you just have in your phone, there is no, you don't have a vlogging kit, which is, one thing that I didn't mention earlier, that, we, in our training, we actually show our trainees how to use vlogging kits so that they're able to hold their phone as steady as possible, as well as managing the sound, even lighting as well.
So Snoopy, Neo, and Molatello, I imagine you all three didn't have formal training on how to use cameras, and Jane as well. Could I ask you, how did you train yourselves?
By doing a lot of mistakes. I mean, reading a lot of books about cinema, watching a lot of tutorials, um, testing a lot, and filming a lot, because with every shoot you learn something new, and then you can never learn fully everything. You can keep watching videos forever on YouTube, and every day there's a new video on how to use this and that, this and that. Even this camera that I bought, like there's so many tutorials on how to use it, what's the best use, and every person describes the use according to his reference, right? The way that he wants things to shoot and not what you want. So you have to find also what's best for you and what's best for your story and the things that you want to shoot, because I can't watch a video of someone telling me how to shoot with a nano in America and then think that I can apply it here in Africa or in Kenya or in Sudan. It's a whole different community, different approach, different mindset of the people. So things, but there are like basics that's international, right? How to set up the frame rate or how to set up the framing and a close up and a general shot, a cover, all these kind of things. So how I learned, I watched a lot of videos, read a lot of books, and did a lot of tests around. That's how I, learned how to use a camera. And then automatically I can use most of this stuff the same way in a phone.
We're living in a time and an age where information is just in abundance. So anything that you want to do, there is information out there. So it's really just immersing yourself and practicing. What I found useful was also sharing the skills that I had with others. I learned so much more from the other young people, sharing and how I was training them. So it really is about getting yourself out there and practicing and using all the information that is there. But what has been useful for me is really just spending time with different young people in different communities in different areas. And that also kind of like helped shape my voice and how I want my stories to be told and how I want to tell my stories. It's really just spending time and training others and learning from them. Yeah.
If I may come in, I just wanted to say that for me, I have been doing camera before I tried the cell phone, filming. So I was just applying the same principles that I would normally use when I use a big camera. I mean, I'm talking composition, I'm talking lighting, I'm talking, the shots that I choose and how I frame them. So it was just, transiting from that. And I must say that, as I indicated how I started, it was I didn't have a choice. So for me to get the story captured at that time, I had to use the phone, and voila, it worked. So yeah, hence I decided to just carry on and teach others.
Can I just say, guys, what happened for me was that I was covering a story about a tragedy in South Africa where many people lost their lives. It was called Life as a Demeni. And I didn't have a budget at the beginning, and I just needed to film these guys and what was going on. And I started filming with my mobile phone, and it just carried on. And in the end, it ended up going on to public broadcasting as a broadcast quality film with people's stories, and a voice, was needed. So I actually think it's a wonderful way to be able to get stories out and films out and voices out without always having to get a crew in, obviously. Yeah.
Exactly. Like one of the things that I'm also trying to explore filming with, one of those smartwatches that have a camera in it. I'm also trying to discover if it works or not for my next story. So, of course, I can get a Sony A7 II or 3, but that wouldn't be the best thing for my film. So I'm trying to figure out if if the watch can work, you know.
Wow. That would be great.
Well, Jane, as you're commenting, you can see that you're in vertical video. You can see you enjoy your iPhone 6.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful that all of you are so curious. I think that's one of the key things. It's curiosity, it's testing things out, and also very entrepreneurial to create schools and education around teaching other people what you've learned. So thank you so much today for sharing with us and teaching us so much of what you have learned and spent so much time trials and errors. What I'd like to do is open it up to the floor to ask anybody if they've got any questions. I see, Mark, you have a question. Would you like to jump in?
Hi. Sorry, Amira. I was just putting my headphones in. Yeah, I just wanted to find out if anyone has any tips regarding sound at all. I have had some experience shooting with a camera, and I've used an external link to my Pro Sound setups, and it's worked well, but it's not exactly discreet and it's not quick. So I wanted to find out if there was any input on that.
So before everybody answers, join us next week on our webinar on sound. But please, Snoopy, Neo, anybody, please do comment.
I'll come in. I mean, we will touch base on this next week also, but there are definitely a lot of like sound equipment that you can use for your phone. I actually have a few, but like I think next week we'll get more in depth and in detail on some of the sound equipment that you can use for your phone, because it's quite important to have good quality sound. If you don't have good sound, it will ruin your footage, especially when people can see it's beautiful, it's all shot well, cinematic, but if the audio is bad, it really is going to break your film or your documentary. So you want to have good sound.
I'm not sure if this is going to help, but I bought myself the Zoom F3 field recorder, which is a lot less clunky than the bigger Zoom recorders, and it's a lot hardier, especially in the conditions where you keep knocking it, where the bigger sort of Zoom recorders keep picking up whenever you just touch the recorder. This one is intended for field sounds, but it works wonderfully well. It's small, it's petite, and you kind of can hide it in the pocket. Yeah, costs a few a few pennies, but it's quite handy. Yeah.
So I did a small comparison or watched a lot of comparison videos between these different small mics because also my shoot needs to be minimalistic. So there's this Holyland Mark II mic, and then there's the DJI mic Mark III. So both of them are very good in terms of capturing sound, interviews and all of that. But what I would recommend having like professional sound equipment because some of these small mics, you'll sound like you're in a vlog or a YouTube video, which isn't that cinematic. Like these sound recorders have this thing called 32-bit float, which is like the high end. It's like shooting flat with the camera. So it's basically shooting raw audio. And then you can play around in post, if there is peaking or whatever, you can play around and then fix the sound. But overall, I prefer having a separate sound guy. And like Neil said, like sound is the is way more important than the image. Because if you have like bad sound, no one will watch the movie. But if you have great sound, bad image, people would still be okay with that. And I think this I've heard this rule years ago where like good image, bad sound doesn't work. Good sound, bad image, it's okay. So I would put most of the energy on sound, having a dedicated person, but if not, then finding the right tool, like within your budget. Like we see in the chat that Zoom F3 is very handy, and there's a lot of also Zoom products that can work.
Yeah, the Zoom F3, I forgot to say, does have that 32-bit float technology, which I don't quite know how it works, but I do understand what you get out of it because you don't have to worry about sound clipping and stuff like that. Yeah, quite handy.
Exactly.
Carolyn, I see you have a question. Thank you everyone for your comments on sound. Cannot wait for the webinar next week.
Yeah, no, I was just interested to know. So, so you're saying it's better to record the sound on a separate device, and how do you sync the sound while you're shooting, so you don't have to do it in post?
Well, it depends. If you're linking the sound directly to the camera wirelessly, then you don't have to worry about syncing. If you can't and you're like on the go, we don't have time for slate or 3-2-1 action, then you need to find like a mechanism between you and the audio guy, how to balance it. Let's say what I do, at the end of the shoot, we keep recording, and once we finish shooting, at the end of the record, we say like take one, shot one, take two, three, whatever. You have to find a way to ease up things in the edit. Of course, nowadays, like the Adobe Premiere makes life very easy. You just select all sync, everything's synced. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But just in case, also try to fix it during the shoot so that later it's easy.
And does it interfere though when you've got an external? I mean, you say it's better quality, but when you've got an external sound guy with, say, mics and a small like the Zoom F3, and you say you're in the field and you don't want people to see that you're shooting them, like in the war zone. How does it work there?
Well, you
Just
have
like
to
I'm supposed to the logistics of having another person with you and the difficulty around it.
You have to have like this kind of a code between you and them. And now I know it might sound like this kind of a weird thing, but you have to have a code like early in the morning. If this happens, then we do this sign together. If this happens, we do this sign. If you're done, I used to do it all the time. If you say like this, that means cut, roll, keep rolling. You have to have like the sign language between you and the sound guy, like this kind
Like
of
you're playing a game of soccer.
Exactly. And that way, you also find this language between you and him or her. And it's very much needed when you're in a shoot with a lot of people. You don't want to get a lot of attention. So using sign language is very handy. You don't want to scream or shout or cut or anything on the set. You need to move. And I'm saying this because, I've been shooting a lot of documentaries in places where I need to really be silent and then moving as if I'm not even there so that people can have this natural conversation between them. Because some people, when they see a camera, they start changing their attitude and their talk to be more sophisticated or whatever. So it's not natural for the movie, right? So that's how I'm moving, like invisibly hiding most of the time, or like just being that guy who's not noticeable.
And my last question, maybe all three of you could talk. In terms of shooting the different formats like landscape versus portrait or vertical for social media, can you talk a little bit about what's the best and, framing and any of the sort of the size of the resolution of the material you want to put into you just want to upload for social media purposes as opposed to like broadcast. And also, I'm interested to know now that you guys have been using all these small cameras in telling the stories, I can understand in terms of the intimacy of the characters or the difficulty of the situation. What is your preferred? Would you rather film on a small camera than say a Sony F7 or one of the bigger cameras if you have the option? Obviously, not taking into consideration the constraints of a war situation. If you just had everything was ideal, you could choose either or.
I'll go for the first question on the format that or the aspect ratio, I think, for different things. So essentially for a social media story or post, you can decide to shoot on portrait. But when you're wanting to make it more professional and cinematic, it's better to just use landscape. But if it's just about social media and content and like vox pops for social media, for TikTok and for Reels, you can go ahead and use that version. It's just that if you want to take to it's more difficult to change a portrait than it is for a landscape, because a landscape on Premiere you can also kind of like change it into portrait. There's more to do when you're shooting landscape than there is with portrait. It's quite limiting when you're shooting with a portrait. So yeah, it's up to you on what you're trying to achieve and what you want to do. This is a skill when you're doing documentary that you need to conceptualize and just sit down and have that production plan and schedule on what you're wanting to achieve. And based on that, that can inspire which kind of like shot that you want to take. Because maybe for your documentary, it works better for you to have footage that is shot on a portrait, just so you can emphasize that it was a cell phone use or something. It has to be a creative decision that you will make. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, thank you. And Snoopy?
I mean, what I would do, just like what Neil said, I would always shoot landscape, because then you have the option of either making it vertical or keeping it landscape. But once you shoot vertical, you can only stick to that. So there's also in Premiere, there's reframing. So even if you shoot landscape and the person moved from one end of the frame to another, there's always reframe where it's automatically reframing that person to the middle of the frame, and that way you can use the vertical to like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. But what I would suggest, always knowing where's your video going to end, because you need to know if it's going to end on Instagram or TV or anywhere else, because that dictates how you're going to shoot from the beginning. But overall, if you don't know where your video gonna end, always shoot like 25 frames, 4K landscape, and then you can convert it to something else.
Snoopy, would you like to share with us
Yeah.
what this
So
is
that's
about?
me filming with the camera. It was a scene in the feature documentary cartoon, and just shooting with the phone hanging next to the donkey, sitting uncomfortably. But that's what it takes to take the shot. Then that's what it takes to take the shot. If I would have done it with a full camera with rig and monitors, it would have been wouldn't be easier than this. You also need like special setup and all that. But also shooting with the phone allows you to go to places that the professional camera doesn't go. And imagine like I can film this whole shot while on one hand hanging to the bar and the other hand I'm holding the phone and shooting this close-up of the kid. And I think that shot made it to the trailer, like a close-up shot of the kid. So in general, just a funny, photo of, when I was shooting back then with flip-flops. But also
Sure.
in that area, because having a big camera would have put us in a lot of danger, and just holding a phone sitting on the donkey, I don't think anyone would take it as a serious thing.
Awesome. Cheryl, I see your hands up.
Yeah, just in advance of next week. It was a quick one. I was just wondering, where is sound there? Did you record sound at all at that time? Was that a separate person?
That's for me.
Sorry, hi. Yeah, it's when you for that picture there, when you're
Mhm.
sitting on the cart
Yeah,
with the donkey.
I was recording with the camera with the phone only, and the sound was taken later because there weren't any dialogue
Okay.
around that shot. So
Yeah.
later on, we just took with the boom, you just recorded that the donkey moving, all of that. But we can do it anywhere else, so you
Yeah.
don't have to
Okay.
do it in the same time simultaneously.
So you weren't recording conversation the kids were having or anything at that time?
Yeah.
No.
They didn't have a conversation. Even in the movie, that
Yes.
part is like with music and this kind of voiceover style,
Okay,
and
cool.
not like active chat.
Yeah, just curious. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions?
I don't know, Amira, if I'm sorry because I may have missed this. Did you touch on the importance of using grips as well when it comes to having control over the movement? Because one of the things that we are doing is to make sure that, to support the handling of the phone, we then have, I don't know what you call it, it's like a square type of thing, and you hold it on the side like this, and then so that it can help you control the movement. So that also I found very helpful in terms of making sure that your visuals don't shake too much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Any last tips, tricks?
Just a question on the grips, if I might. Is that Montello, are there specific ones that you use that are based on your experience?
Yeah, I don't know what they're called because I have a tech guy that helps me in the company, and he's not closer here. But otherwise, it's just a vlogging kit. We ordered sets from Take-A-Lot. They come in the form of those grips as well as sound. I saw Neo holding one of them, as well as like different gadgets. Really, they come in a kit.
Great, thank you.
I mean, for me, I don't always have like the advantage of having a sound person with, so I really just make use of as little as most. It might not be the greatest, but it's worked wonderfully with the sounds that I'm using, and I'll elaborate more next week. I didn't share the pictures. I can share them with you now, just so you can see which one that I use that also has like a windshield to it, which is quite useful and helpful. I don't know if you want me to WhatsApp you those pictures, Amira, just as an example, if there's still time.
Sure. I don't know how to do it. If maybe can you put it in the chat?
I can put the name of the sound that I use in the chat. Let me just find the link online.
Leo, you are a co-host, so you can share from your side.
Oh, can I?
Oh, great.
Great. Let me just see. So this is, yeah. So it's a Rhodes. So these are the sound equipment that we will normally use. So even when it's windy, it kind of like shields the sound. This you get when we start filming, you kind of like lock it next to your phone so that it's not looking like this. So more like this, there's a lock thing that it has with when you import it in. They're very handy, very useful, give you so much better sound quality than you would if you were using your phone. And I think I'll share more about it also next week, because I always advocate for using as little cost as possible, because it's always emerging filmmakers that I'm working with, people that don't really have access to hiring the next person. It's really just wanting to tell their stories and having that platform and that space to kind of like have a voice. So we would use those in that situation, in the event that you don't have the extra budget to get an external sound person. But the sound, if you can get a sound person, I would highly recommend. But if you can't, there's other ways that you can do.
Thank you. I want to say thank you from all of us to Snoopy, Neo, Monotelo, and everybody else who contributed in this discussion. So the DFA, as I mentioned at the beginning, is it's a community-based association, and it's part of everybody just volunteering and giving what they can. So I also want to say a big up to Alette and the DocShare team for putting this together for us. It's really fantastic. And please volunteer. So Mobato actually invited me to volunteer, and it was really nice. Thank you, Mobato, for reaching out and saying, Amira, come join. So anybody, please feel free, come join. There's always a space. And Snoopy, please do join the Documentary Filmmakers Association. We would love to have you.
Cool.
And with that, I would like to say next week is our webinar on sound, and we wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.